Hello and welcome to part 17 of this Kerbal Space Program 2 video series covering the exploration mode in the Force Science update. So in part 16 we actually finished the final main mission which was going to Tylo, and in this one we're going to be starting on the remainder of our secondary missions. So we'll first of all go to mission control and have a look at what we've got. As you can see, we have quite a lot of missions available to us at the moment, but the one we are going to be focusing on in this video is the Kapy Rock mission, which is part of the Kerbwide Tour. Now, there are two different locations we'll be going to during this tour, but like I said, we're going to be just going to Kapy Rock in this one. And I was originally planning on doing it in doing both missions in two separate flights. However, it turns out the modified F-18 that I did in my modification video will actually do both missions in one flight, and ideally, hopefully it will actually be able to get us all the way back to the KSC as well, so fingers crossed we'll be able to do that. But of course, before we can actually do this, we are going to need to get Kapy Rock in the ideal position so we can actually get there while it's in the daytime, because of course we don't want to be getting there during the night. So we'll start off by going to the tracking station. And what we'll do is we will click on Kapy Rock on the Kerbin drop down and hit focus. And you can see now that Kapy Rock is right there, and ideally what we want is we want to actually have Kapy Rock just going into the daytime, because if we were to launch where we are now, then Kapy Rock is going to be pretty much in the middle of the night and it'll be almost impossible to land. So yeah, we're going to warp forwards and get Kapy Rock just so that it's just coming into morning, and that way, like I say, we'll have plenty of time to actually be able to get there in the daylight. And the reason why we're actually doing it here, because we could go a little bit earlier and it would definitely be in light, but the reason we go in to daytime or just to the morning is because once we get there, like I say, we are going to be wanting to do another mission straight from Kapy Rock. And if we do this, then by the time we get to Kapy Rock, it's going to be coming somewhere around here, which will mean that we'll still have plenty of light to actually land. But then when we take off, we are going to be going to where is it? I think, I can't remember which island the actual Stargazer point is on, but it basically means that we'll be coming down the bottom, and I think it's actually that island there, so we'll be flying around here, and it basically means that by the time we get to Stargazer point, that also will be in the light as well, because obviously if we were to take off at the wrong time, then there's a chance that even if we get to Kapy Rock in the light, then Stargazer point will be in the dark, and we don't want that to happen. We want to try and land at both of them while they're both in the daytime. But anyway, yeah, now that is set, we can go straight to the runway and we can actually get into the flight. Alright, so the first thing we'll do is we will set the brakes, and because this plane is so heavy, we are going to need to use the afterburners to take off. So we'll press 1 on the keyboard and that will set up the afterburners. Then we can stage. Then once they have powered up, we can press B to turn off the brakes. And now obviously, because the bottom tanks are so far behind the wheels, we need to be quite careful when we're doing our pitch up manoeuvre. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until we're about 100 meters per second ish. Then once we get there, we'll start carefully pitching up to get ourselves into to get ourselves off the ground. And with that, we can start very carefully pitching up just to make sure that we don't end up hitting the actual drop tanks. Now we're off the ground, we can retract the landing gear, and you can see that because we've added so much weight to the bottom, it is actually trying to nose down a bit. So one little tip you can do to sort out your pitch trim, because obviously we will need to start rolling, and if we roll it'll start to actually pitch down. One little tip we can do is if we look at the tail, we can then hold down Alt and hold down S, and then as soon as the tail actually starts to move like that, we'll know that we've got to the correct pitch trim. So now if we turn off the SAS, we can see it's not changing the tail at all. The only other thing as well you'll notice is that I've turned off the actual afterburners, because we don't want to be using afterburner too much because it'll use up loads of our fuel. But yeah, now we need to actually start thinking about going in the correct direction. So to get to Kapy Rock, the best direction to go in is actually 135 degrees on the nav ball. So you can get there by either going to 135 degrees on the the heading bug or dial, or it's this little green, sorry, this little thin black line which has the 135 on the bottom of it. And then throughout the entire flight to Kapy Rock, we're going to be trying to basically keep ourselves pointed at 135 degrees. Now the only other thing I'm going to do as well is I'm going to click on the altimeter to make sure that we are set to C, because we want to try and make sure we're staying at roughly the same height. And we're going to be going up to about 2,000 to 2,500 metres above the surface, because we want to stay relatively low, given that the lower we are, the more air we'll be getting under the wings, which means the more lift we'll get. Whereas if we go too high, then what will happen is we won't be getting as much air under the wings, and the plane will be trying to pitch up even further, which will be, you know, pretty bad, because we won't be, well, we'll be getting more drag than actual lift in that case. So like I said, I'm just going to keep playing around with the controls and the pitch trim just to get ourselves just about ascending. And another thing you'll notice as well is when you are flying a plane like this, particularly on long flights, you'll notice it starts to roll more, I think, to the right during this actual, when we're going in this direction. And originally I thought that might have been something that was unbalanced on the plane, like for example we only have a ladder on one side of the plane. However, it doesn't appear to be that, because I've tried doubling up the ladder in the past and it didn't make any difference. So I think it actually might be the you know, the rotation of the planet that causes that. So yeah, we're going to just need to keep on tapping the you know, the roll control while we're actually doing this flight. So obviously because it's so heavy, we're not going to be able to get up to particularly high speed to start off with, and also with it being night, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually warp forwards as well. However, when we warp, if we try and do our actual roll adjustments, you can see it's very responsive. So what we can do to make it even easier to actually roll during warp is we can hit the caps lock button, and that will give us the fine manoeuvre control, and it's just a lot easier to actually, you know, make our roll adjustments as we're flying. And of course, like I say, because we are also quite heavy and going so slow and we're in the night, there's not really much to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be cutting out most of this actual flight, because I'm sure you probably don't want to be just watching me flying for like an hour or two, which is how long this mission will take. I mean, although the plane does look pretty awesome in the night with all the lights on it, it is quite boring to watch, and like I say, it's going to take a couple of hours to do this entire flight. So to try and make the video as short as possible, I'm going to be cutting out the vast majority of the actual flight. However, I will cover important parts, like for example dropping the tanks, you know, doing all the science and the actual landings, of course, which are probably the most important part. But yeah, once we get to, like, the next thing is probably going to be the drop tanks. So yeah, once we get that, we'll cover that, and then we'll cover the science and so on. Right, so the first set of drop tanks have just emptied, so we're going to cut the warp. And the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to the resource manager and just make sure that they are actually empty, because sometimes the tanks don't actually like drain as you'd expect them to. Yeah, that looks about right. Yeah, we can actually drop them now, so we'll start off by dropping them. There we go. Now we just need to wait for the next set, and like I say, sometimes the tanks won't actually empty properly, so we're going to need to keep an eye on this and make sure they are emptying at the correct rate, and if not, then we're going to need to start, you know, trying to transfer the fuel across, which can be a real like pain, because the transfer menu is still quite bugged, but if we need to do that, we'll go through that as and when we need to. So yeah, it's been a little while since we dropped the first tanks now, and the drop tanks don't seem to be emptying properly, so we'll have a quick look at our resource manager again. And yeah, you can see it's starting to empty these tanks now instead of doing them evenly, which is a bit annoying. I don't know why it does this. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to start transferring the fuel around, which is something I really don't particularly like doing, to be honest, because it's a bit awkward and it's a bit of a pain. So we'll start off by just putting all of the tanks into the transfer section. Now what we'll do is we'll hit in on all of the tanks that are not the JF2 and JF50s, sorry. And then we'll make sure that the JF50s are all set to out. Obviously while we're doing this we need to keep an eye on our nav ball as well to make sure we're not rolling too far. So that looks about right, so we'll hit transfer and start moving the fuel out of the JF50s and into the main tanks. See, it's barely even touched them now, so what we can do is we can actually start trying to drain the tanks out of the from the outer tanks onto the inner ones. So I'm just going to move the plane to the side so we can actually see what's going on. And the problem is now, like I say, it's still a bit bugged is this, so if we were to hit in on one of them, you can see it's not doing anything with the rest of them, so we need to actually find the specific tanks that we want to be draining, draining. So we'll make sure we're on the correct ones. It's a bit annoying. It's going to take a little bit of doing, so I'll get this set up and then we'll actually do the draining of these tanks. So we'll go out. Now we'll put these into the tanks that are on the inner, drop tanks. So we'll set those to in. It is a bit of a faff having to do this, which is why I usually like to try and avoid having to do this, but for some reason once we drop the first set of tanks it doesn't drain them right. Unfortunately we are going to have to keep doing this throughout the flight now because I want to try and get rid of the drop tanks as soon as possible. So obviously the longer we have them on, the more weight they are adding, the less efficient the plane is. That's about right, so let's get these transferring. So we still have a little bit of fuel left in the outer tank, so we'll have to do that again in the future. But unfortunately, like I say, we're going to have to go through each individual tank, which is a pain. But we'll deal with that as and when we need to. Yeah, I think what I'm probably going to do then is I'm going to basically skip out all of the fuel transfers because it's pretty much the same thing every single time. I mean, if we quick save and quick load, then it will fix the fuel transfer menu to the point where we can just hit one button and it'll highlight all the rest of them. But of course we still need to faff around with all the tanks and try and get the correct tanks and so on, and it's a real pain, so it takes a lot of time, and I'm sure you don't want to just be sitting there watching me doing, you know, fuel transfers for nearly an hour, which if I was to leave them all in, the video would be about an hour long. So yeah, I'm going to cut them all out instead just to make things a little bit smoother, and hopefully that means we'll be able to get to the actual landing itself pretty quickly. So yeah, now we're about to hit land. We can go into the parts manager. We're going to go to science. We're going to open up all of the atmospheric surveys. Like I say, the reason we're doing it this way is because it means now that we can dedicate each one of these to each different biome, and we're going to be going over 4 biomes over this island. So we'll start off by going over the beaches, then we'll go over grasslands, then I think it is highlands, followed by mountains. And as I say, this just means that once we have actually started the science, we don't have to then worry about, you know, waiting for that science to finish and then waiting for us to get over the next biome and so on and so forth. This way we could just start the science and then forget about it. So we're over the beach, so we can start that one up. And then we'll see, once we get over the grasslands, see now it's saying running needs beach, so we can hit start survey on the next one, and it'll keep doing that. And as I say, once we go over the beach again, this one will start back up, and yeah, once we get over highlands we'll start the next one, and then once we get over the mountain we'll start the next one. And we have actually drifted a bit far to the right now, so we need to make sure we're still going at 135. And the reason we want to be around about 2 to 2,500 metres above the surface is while we're going over the land, this should give us plenty of space or plenty of clearance above any mountains, so we're not going to accidentally hit any, because obviously flying in the dark like this we can't actually see whether there's any mountains coming up ahead of us. So yeah, like I say, we'll just wait until we get to the where are we? Yeah, we'll wait until we get to the mountains and we'll start the science for that. So we're or the highlands even. So we'll do that now, and then we'll do the mountains. We seem to have more little sniffers than I expected. I added 4 on the front, didn't I? I actually only needed to add 3. Oh well. Better to have too many than not enough, I guess. You can see we've already finished the grasslands, I believe that is. Oh no, the highlands. So we've already finished the highlands, so we probably only needed a couple of extra science on here. Or little sniffers, whatever they're called. Atmospheric surveys, that's the one. There's our next set of science, and we are over the mountains as well, so we can start that survey. It looks like it started the survey for the highlands because we just missed it. You know, we're going to cancel that survey because that was over the highlands. We need to make sure we get that for the mountains instead. There we go. So yeah, now that's done, we can just close up the science. So we've already got the science for the highlands and the grasslands, and now we can just leave that until it's done. So while we're here, we might as well go onto the map and have a quick look at our trajectory and just make sure that we're actually still going in roughly the right direction. So as you can see, the area which the Kapy Rock is located is on that little bit of desert down there. So we'll zoom into our plane and make sure we're going in roughly the right direction. And yeah, that looks like we're heading in this direction here. So we are probably going to need to change our trajectory a little bit at some point. But we'll wait until we get to the coast and then we'll have another look. And of course, the closer we get to the actual target, the more we need to keep checking our trajectory to make sure we're going in the correct direction. So we are actually starting to see a bit of a glow on the horizon, so we can see we're coming to sunrise soon. But you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can't transfer all of the fuels out of the remaining drop tanks on the wings to the ones underneath. And see if we can't get rid of those drop tanks. So we'll go back to the resource manager and do that. Let's see how this works. Yeah, there we go. We've pretty much emptied those tanks. We're still a tiny little bit in them. I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference. So let's have a look and make sure that we have got all the correct tanks set. So we're going to drop these tanks then, I think. So we'll cut the warp and we'll get rid of those. I'll just lose a bit of weight and it means that we won't end up accidentally. Well, it should be a bit more efficient that way. Actually bombing the mountains now, aren't we, essentially? Are we going to see the explosion? There we go. Well, there wasn't anyone living down there. We'll get ourselves back to 135 again. Like I say, once we actually get into the daylight, we'll check our trajectory and make sure we're still going in the correct direction. And there we have sunrise. You do get some beautiful sunrises in this game, although it always makes me think of the intro to The Lion King. I always start singing that song. I won't sing it for you now because it sounds a bit stupid, plus I don't know the lyrics. But yeah, now we're here, let's have another quick look at the map and check our trajectory and make sure we're going in roughly the right direction. Looks like we're heading down towards here. So where is that in relation to Kapy Rock? So of course, as we are flying, we are going to be going around, so we might actually be heading in almost the correct direction. But as I said, we'll check again once we get to the coast, and then once we're over this island as well, and we shouldn't take too long to actually get to Kapy Rock then. But now we're in the light, we can actually turn off the formation lights, because I think it looks a bit silly having them on all the way through the day. So I have put these onto an action group, so if I press 5 that'll turn those off, and it'll just leave all of the beacons and so on. And now we can just enjoy the actual sunrise and continue the flight until we actually get to Kapy Rock. But yeah, now we're over the coast, or we're over the sea even, we can go onto the map and check our trajectory and see how we're doing in relation to Kapy Rock. So as I say, Kapy Rock is up here. You can just about see the mark, but it's not very easy because it's on top of the desert. And you can see we are actually heading in completely the wrong direction now. So I think what we're going to do is we are going to roll. We're going to go up to about... We could start off by 90 degrees, but I think maybe 45 degrees is probably the best place to go to for the time being. So I'm going to stop at about 60 and see what our trajectory is doing. So obviously there's a risk we could go too far, but as long as we're heading in roughly the right direction, then we'll be able to see the marker once we get there. In fact, yeah, we're going in the wrong direction now, so we'll go to 90 instead of 45 actually. Like I say, once we get to the the other side of the island that we're coming up to now, which I think you can just about see, I believe it's just there is the island. Once we get to the other side of that, we'll be able to check our trajectory again and make sure we're heading in the right direction. Okay, so now we have just come over the top of this island. We'll do another check of our trajectory to make sure we're still going in roughly the right direction. And yeah, it looks like we're going in nowhere near the right direction now, so we'll go to 45 degrees. And once we're there, we'll see if we can't empty these drop tanks and get rid of them. Now let's quickly check our trajectory again. Yeah, that looks a bit more like it. We're probably going a little bit north now, but as soon as we get close, we'll start to be able to see the actual target marker. And you know what, I think I'm probably going to go more to about 60 degrees instead of 45. There we are, right about 60. Make sure we're flat. And like I say, we will now go back to the resource manager yet again, see if we can't empty these. There we go. Let's make sure they are all empty. They look pretty good to me. And now we can get rid of all of the drop tanks. So we'll cut the warp, get rid of these. That's a bit tight. Yeah, now we're on to the main inner tanks now, which is pretty good because, as I say, we've pretty much done the entire flight now, and we've barely even used any fuel in the main tanks. So we'll make sure our pitch trim is set so we're not ascending too quickly. Anyway, so yeah, let's go back to the map and just make sure we're definitely headed in the right direction, and also we're not descending too far. Yeah, we seem to be heading in roughly the right direction, so now it's just a matter of getting to Kapy Rock, making sure we're obviously not descending too much because we are pointed below the horizon now. And once we get there, we'll be able to actually start thinking about the landing itself. So it looks to me like the landmass we're aiming for is actually over there, so let's have a look at our map and see where we're doing. Yeah, we do need to turn a little bit to the left, so we'll make sure we're actually going about 45 degrees this time. You can see now we've got rid of all the drop tanks. We're absolutely flying, literally. You know, the timer has sped right up and it's much more responsive now. So it's definitely the drop tanks that cause the lag issues when we've got so many on. It's probably what caused the lag issues during the actual Tylo mission as well. Anyway, let's double check our trajectory. Could probably go a little bit further to the left, but of course the closer we get, the you know, well, as soon as we get 50 kilometers away from the actual target, the target marker should appear, although we did turn the target markers off when we dropped those tanks, so we'll need to press F4 again just to make sure that they are there, and for some reason that's weird. You know, I think I'm going to try and get rid of those two markers, which is very strange. I'm going to do a quick save and a quick load again, so press F5 and F9 and do a quick load. Just to try and get rid of those because they're going to bug me. Right, so that's got rid of the markers, which was a bit strange. I've never seen that before. Yeah, like I say, we'll go back to 4 times speed and we'll wait until the actual target marker for the Kapy Rock appears. And of course, as we come over the top of the desert, we will be able to do some more science. So we'll get ready for that by opening up science again, and we'll use the air sniffer this time, just because we didn't use it last time. And there's the target marker already showing up. So, like I say, once we get there, we will start to think about our actual landing. First of all, we'll wait until we're over the desert, and then we'll do that. And what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to press, or hold Alt and press W, just to start our initial descent. We need to press caps lock as well to reset the, you know, to make sure we're doing fine control. We obviously don't want to be descending too quickly, so let's make sure we're not descending too fast. I'm also going to hit the altimeter to go to ground. Now we're over desert, we can start that bit of science. Now it's just a matter of actually getting to Kapy Rock. So you need to make sure, obviously, when you're doing this, that you aren't going, you know, you're still not on warp. Because if you remain on 3 times or 4 times warp, then it's very difficult to actually get the landing. And if you've seen the Raise Space videos, he has a habit, or had a habit, of you know, leaving it on 3 times warp, which is one of the reasons why he crashed every time he tried to land. Well, not every time, obviously, but half the time. So yeah, now we're getting close. We're going to cut the warp. We can press F4 now to get rid of the marker, because we can actually see Kapy Rock is right there. And I'm also going to reduce the throttle a little bit so we're not going quite so fast. And I'm also going to press caps lock so we've got full control as well, because now we need to start thinking about where we're going to land. So there are a couple of places which you can land which are quite easy to land. For example, around this lake here, it's relatively flat because it's just beaches. However, I'm actually going to try and land relatively close to the target. In fact, I'd like to try and land directly next to it. So obviously we have our downward facing engine, which will basically give us a short landing. So let's go for a quick flyover and actually have a look to see where our, you know, where the best place to land is. That's our, what was that? I think that was the desert science, wasn't it? This is also a good time to quick save as well, just so that, you know, if we do make a mistake, then we know we're not going to, well, we can reload, we don't have to do half the flight again. So you can see as we come over the top of it, it is very bumpy. It's actually not an easy place to land at all, although it is considerably easier to land at than the other one, which is, what is it, Stargazer Point. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from probably around about that angle there and see if I can't get the landing that way. So we're going to fly around this lake. I'm just going to check out our science to see what science we still need to get, which I believe is just beach now. Yeah, see, we've still got 52 seconds of beach left to do, so I'm going to fly around this lake because I know that the you know, the biome around the edge of the lake is actually beach. We'll do our turn, and then hopefully we should be in roughly the right direction to actually start coming in for landing. So there's our beach science. I'll get rid of the warp because, as you saw, it was very awkward with the warp because our actual pitch trim isn't brilliant at the minute. We're actually going way too slow, that's why, so we need to increase the throttle again. I'm going to gain a little bit of height, but we want to be coming in relatively low. But of course we also want to make sure that we're not coming in too fast as well. So we are going to need to slow ourselves right down. Of course we can do that with the flaps and the air brake, but we'll see if we need them as we start to approach. I'm going to do our final turn now. I think I'm actually going to press F5 again to quick save so that we don't have to do the science again. Now we're going to start off by dropping the landing gear. Like I say, we could use the air brakes and flaps, but I'm not going to do that because first of all I'm going to cut the throttle and then I'm going to press 6 on the keyboard, and that should activate the downwards facing engine, which it has. Now we're going to try and make sure we are slowing down. We are coming in a bit fast though, so I'm going to press 4 and 3 to extend our air brakes and flaps. Let's see if we can't get a nice smooth landing. We're coming in a bit faster than I'd like. It's a bit iffy. You know what, no, oh dear, what am I doing? Ooh, this is dodgy, we might lose the engine. There we go, buggeration. Yeah, I really want the engines on this because I want to be able to take off again, so I'm going to press F5 or F9 even and go back to the quick load and try that again. Right, so this is proving much harder than I thought it was going to be, and I think the reason why is because I've actually got a lot more fuel in this design of the plane than I had during the practices because I didn't have quite so many drop tanks. So trying to land close to Kapy Rock is actually a lot more difficult because we hit the ground quite hard. So I'm going to have another flyover and see if there's anywhere better that we can land. I mean, ideally, landing around there might be alright, but once again, it's very bumpy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for another fly around, and I'm going to come in at a slightly different angle. And if this one doesn't work, I'm going to just land down on the beach and then run over. It's a bit easier doing it that way. Of course, as we do a hard bank, we're actually, you know, scrubbing out a bit of our speed as well. So I'm going to go for a hard bank now. I'm also going to extend the landing gear. And now let's cut the throttle. I'll press 6 to go to the downward facing engine. I'm also going to press 3 and 4 to extend the flaps and air brake. Now I'm going to try and use the downward facing engine just to make sure that we stay relatively level. Don't hit the ground quite so fast. I'm also going to lock the brakes on so that we know we're going to stop the second we land. It's looking much more like it. Come on, stop, stop. Yes, there we go. That is what I wanted. Oh, that was a bit of a pain. That was about the 6th attempt, I think. So yeah, now we're set. We can quick save because I don't want to have to do all that again. I'm going to retract the air brake and the flaps. Now we're here, we might as well do a bit of science because we have the Science Junior on board. So I don't think we've done any science here in the desert yet. We're also going to, in fact, you know, I'm going to taxi over to it, see how that works. So I'll go back to the normal engines by pressing 6 again. And we'll just make sure that the lower facing engine is turned off, which it is. And now we're going to just increase the throttle and taxi it over towards the actual, you know, Kapy Rock. So turn off the brakes. We're going to try and go very slowly because if we go too fast, there's a risk we might end up, you know, breaking something. We'll get ourselves a little bit closer. Just managing the throttle to make sure that we are still going forwards and not rolling backwards. Also make sure we're not pointed straight at Kapy Rock as well, because of course we want to be able to take off. So now we're getting nice and close. I'm going to cut the throttle, I'm going to activate the brakes again to stop us and lock them in place. And now we are at Kapy Rock, we can actually do the science for the mission. So that's that mission done. And yeah, the only other thing we want to do now is EVA and get a bit of surface science. So I'll extend the ladder I'll EVA Val. I'm just going to let go, you know, because we don't need to use the ladder to get down. Now we're here, we can do our surface survey. While that's happening, we might have a quick look. Might as well have a quick look at Kapy Rock. So I mean, apparently it's supposed to look a bit like a capybara. You know, it doesn't, in my opinion. But you know, it's just a rock, really, isn't it? But yeah, now that is done, we're going to quickly run over back towards the desert and get a little bit more science from there. Now back in the desert, we can do our surface survey from here. And that is that done. And now all we need to do is reboard the plane. And yeah, I think because this has taken a very long time to record, it's actually taken about... Well, it's well over 2 hours it's taken to record this, which is kind of, you know, annoying. But as a result, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave this one here, and I'm going to do the second part of this mission in the next video. So yeah, that is the Kapy Rock mission. As I say, this plane is capable of doing a kind of short takeoff or short landing, and generally it looks like the best place to land is around here, which isn't... It's not very easy, but if you do have trouble, like I said, just land down on the beach and then you can run up. It takes a little while longer, and you won't get quite as much science as well, but that way, at least you know you're definitely going to be able to land and take off again. But yeah, like I say, that's going to be everything for this particular video. So I am going to essentially go to a kind of weekly schedule, releasing at about 6 PM, you know, GMT every Saturday. So yeah, the next video will be next Saturday then, and then after that we'll get into the next mission. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit boring, there wasn't much to see in it, but you know, it's all part of the game, I guess. And if you did enjoy this video, then please feel free to like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.